Hey y'all, thanks for checking out the video. Before we get into the review, I just wanted to say that I've been obsessed with this game for the past 3 weeks and really enjoyed it. The point of this video is to review the game from a completionist perspective, from someone who has spent more than 40 hours with the game, because many of the reviews I've watched from some of those larger channels sound like they haven't really beaten the game, similar to the general audience. So if this review resonates with you, leave a like, comment, or consider subscribing. Thanks. I've only gotten a few platinum trophies for games, or 100% of the achievements, but this is one of those few instances that I have. After spending the past few days mulling over in my head if I really love the game or think it's overrated, I'm still on the fence and don't think I'll be able to decide anytime soon. In this review and discussion, I'll tell you why. I feel a lot of the initial reviews for the game have only played through the first few hours, as seen by their videos only showcasing the first 2 out of 6 biomes, and not only for the reason to prevent spoilers, because they haven't actually finished the game themselves. It's understandable why, because people are most interested in reviews right when the game releases, so most major channels will publish a review even if they haven't completed it yet for those precious views and ad revenue, even with review copies ahead of time, which, regardless of what reviewers say, will inevitably lead to biased viewpoints. There's no guarantee that the person beat the game or spent more time with it after the initial credits roll to see how the game fares for those unlocking more of the game's collectibles and secrets. While it's more honest to post a first impressions or in-progress review, it doesn't have the same weight for those people looking for a score or wanting to know if it's good or not, as if reviews aren't subjective anyway. I personally know that I also have this mindset and miss out on a lot of great games because of some minor issues or overblown flaws that I read in some reviews, while buying games that get universal acclaim that I never finish because it's just not my style of game. If you want me to get to the point with Returnal, TLDR, then yes, I think everybody should play and buy the game. I think it's important to support developers that try new things and not just blindly throw money at developers that overpromise while under-delivering. I'm glad to hear that the developers of Returnal, Housemarque, a lesser-known development team based out of Finland, recently got bought out and acquired by Sony after a successful launch. It was put front and center as one of the PS5's exclusives that Sony desperately needed during this first year of the PS5's launch. While definitely a Game of the Year contender so far, I see it winning many awards for different categories by the end of the year. I'll start with what Returnal does well and some of my criticisms that has me so divided on this game. First and foremost, the combat is fun, fast-paced, and responsive. The thing that sets this apart from other roguelike games, which while it does include many of the traditional features that the genre is known for, it has stellar graphics and a third-person perspective. I've grown tired of playing 2D roguelikes, both from the indie and larger studios, and it isn't a genre I love due to its repetition. Not considering Souls-like games in this category, I would without a doubt say Returnal is my favorite roguelike game so far, but also consider I haven't played games like Hades or Dead Cells, which are also in this genre. A major plus for me, but a criticism in many players' mind, is the difficulty. There's no changing the difficulty and you are going to die a lot. I would not recommend this to the casual gamer that has a short attention span or gets frustrated easily, as once you set the game down for too long, you'll lose the progress you've made at getting better at the game and less likely to see it through to the end. While I think this is a good entry for those that have never played a roguelike, it's probably not going to win you over if you don't like the roguelike mechanics. A lot of repetition, areas that are obviously inaccessible without specific items, randomness, and a fair bit of luck. It basically has all the same elements as the game Enter the Gungeon, but with a few improvements I'll mention later. The part of the game that's essential to its success is the combat, since that's what you'll be spending most of your time doing, and if that wasn't solid, everything else would fall apart. You find a large variety of interesting weapons, which all feel distinct that fit into the alien world aesthetic. This includes the shotgun-like Spitmaul blaster, which is good at close quarters, the tachyomatic carbine that is an accurate semi-automatic rifle for long distances, or the more unique weapons like the electropylon driver that shoots out electrified tethers that connect the points you fire, which can be attached to the ground, between walls, or directly to enemies that can quickly tick away their health while you position yourself further away. Not only will you find different weapons like the ones I just mentioned, but each weapon has about half a dozen alt firing modes, which is activated if you pull the trigger used for aiming all the way down instead of the halfway down used to look down the sights for regular bullets. These alt-fire options do a massive amount of damage and take a while to recharge, and then on top of the type of weapon, the type of alt-firing option, you also get random affixes on your weapons, up to 4 on a single gun by the time you reach the final biome. You unlock these affixes by using the gun to kill enemies, and once they are unlocked, they are saved for subsequent runs. These affixes give you more rounds, burst fire, armor piercing, increasing your stagger damage, and vary for each weapon type. Even after my 40 hours with the game, I still haven't unlocked all the affixes, giving me a constant feeling that there is always some benefit from each run, even for those completionist players. Killing some of the more difficult enemies reminds me a lot of RPGs or looter shooters, where you look forward to killing that mob of enemies for the next weapon upgrade, looking for the specific affixes to drop, such as leech damage, that could be a game changer as it heals you for a portion of the damage done. Together with the haptic feedback and sounds of the weapons, not only when they fire, but when they hit the enemy, all add to the combat feeling fluid, precise, and something that is crucial with the difficulty of the game. I also have to spend more time gushing about the music, voiceovers, and the overall sound of the game. Everything from the sound effects of the enemies, the audio feedback of the bullets hitting your targets, to the rustling of the environments as you move from one place to another is amazing and adds to the overall immersiveness of the game. Based on what I've mentioned so far, technically the game is considered more of a roguelite game, since there are ways to advance and carry over your progress after each run, making you feel that each run is worthwhile even if you don't get too far. Some items are permanent and kept after you start each run. Other than unlocking the weapon affixes, another thing that is saved between runs is a resource called Ether, that can be used to make runs easier if you save them up. This ether allows you to bypass the negative effects of items infected with malignancy that can cause a suit malfunction. These malfunctions can range from something as insignificant as taking fall damage from long falls, or something really detrimental, such as taking damage each time you pick up an item. You also can't just stack a bunch of malfunctions, because when you get a third one, you automatically suffer a critical malfunction that destroys a random carried item, such as a beneficial artifact that increases your stats, or ends up reducing your overall health, also called integrity if you don't have any items. Some items and chests have a higher chance of inflicting malfunctions than others, again adding to the element of luck and chance. But you can remove malfunctions by meeting specific conditions that also range in difficulty, such as collecting obolites, which is a currency used in the game you get from enemies and scatter around each level, or using consumables or performing melee kills. So the balance between risking picking up a malignant item, suffering through its negative effects of its malfunctions, and seeing what conditions to get rid of them is a fun mechanic. There are also parasites which you can attach to your suit, which you can carry up to 5 at one time, that give you a benefit but also a downside. These are also randomly paired, so you'll be looking at parasites, seeing if the benefit is worth the risk. That's where one of my complaints with the nature of roguelikes come in, and how much randomness and luck is involved. Sometimes you might get on a lucky streak, or an unlucky streak that can make your run easier or really difficult. You might run into a mystery room early on that can lead to 100 extra obolites for making purchasing that artifact you want a little easier, or on the other hand, it could take you to a room where you have to fight a difficult monster that you're not quite prepared for. You might find a weapon, key, item, collectible, or new room on your second run, or have to replay the level dozens of times to get it. You can see this as fun and increasing the replayability of the game, or more tedious after having to play the same biome for what feels like your 50th time and not getting what you need. When I was younger, I loved playing really long games and getting the most value out of them, but now that I have a backlog of a dozen games I want to play, replayability is not high on my list of priorities for game features. Another thing I loved about the game is that it has an interesting story, which usually takes a back seat in other roguelike games. It combines sci-fi, Lovecraftian monsters, and Greek mythology into a universe you piece little by little as you go on each of your subsequent runs. The trailers for the game show the main character Celine crash landing on a mysterious planet after receiving a strange signal from the surface, but after dying finds herself in some time loop where she continues to start over from the point of the crash. From this point, I'll go into a few negatives I have with the game. The first and foremost is that when I was playing the game, there was a good portion where I couldn't finish it because the game would keep crashing. I wasted a good 6 to 8 hours of my game time. This involved both my game closing automatically or my PS5 hard crashing and turning off altogether, needing to hold down the power button to the console to bring it back to life. This is also considering I was playing this game about 2 months after its release, and this issue was probably more prevalent right after release. But this is something I haven't heard many reviewers mention, and it's a serious issue because it made the game unplayable, especially for this type of game that doesn't save. Actually, it did save, and simply treated all these crashes as deaths, since each time I rebooted the game, the ether I used during the run was gone. It could be a rare issue that only affects a small minority of PS5s, or this could be more prevalent and reviewers didn't mention it because they didn't actually play the game as much as they have claimed to. It mostly affected me while I got to the 6th and final biome, and after almost just quitting the game for good, I tried uninstalling and reinstalling, and that did finally allow me to get past the 6th biome without crashing. But in my 40+ hour gameplay, I've only experienced about 6 to 8 crashes during my game time, which is still some of the worst I've ever experienced in any game, including many of the notoriously buggy ones. However, keep in mind, by the time this video releases, there could have been a patch to fix the crashing I'm referring to, but just like Cyberpunk 2077, there should be no excuse for games with critical bugs that could cause crashing like this, especially on consoles. While casual runs can be from 30 minutes to an hour, some of my runs were up to 4 hours long, so crashing at the end of one of these long runs, where you're building up your character slowly, and having your game crash at the end can be devastating. While you can put your console on sleep mode and resume whenever you want, it's hard to guarantee that the PS5 won't update closing all your apps, or simply crashing during this time. Another gripe I have is that while I mentioned there are a total of 6 biomes in the game, it's essentially 3 main ones, with some tweaks added to the existing ones for the second 3. The game is broken up into 2 main chapters, each with 3 biomes. You can't carry over your progress from one chapter to the next, but you can carry over your progress within each chapter. So if you're struggling on biome 3, you can take your time on the previous 2 to collect items that could make your character stronger heading into that 3rd biome. While not going into spoilers, it definitely isn't 6 drastically different biomes that I thought there was going to be. A little disappointing since I did love the level design for each of the levels they did have. A quality of life improvement that this game does implement for the genre of roguelikes compared to a game such as Enter the Gungeon is that after you beat a boss, you don't have to defeat them again, and can take a shortcut to the new biome you unlock with a permanent item. And at the beginning of the new biome, there is always an item that increases your proficiency level to that of the level of enemies nearby so that your guns you find don't feel underpowered and take forever to kill enemies, which now have more hit points. I enjoyed the freedom to skip or replay bosses at the end of each biome, and I'm glad I wasn't forced to repeat them like other roguelike games, even if I do consider them on the easier side. Speaking a little more about the bosses, while they initially look daunting and have different mechanics as you get them lower in health, they aren't actually as hard as some of the areas leading up to them. The key to most boss encounters is just to keep moving, and you'll most likely dodge all of their attacks, while occasionally jumping or dashing based on their telegraphed movement. I found that some of the larger non-boss enemies and the challenge rooms you will encounter in the stages were definitely harder, as instead of just one boss, you would have many monsters of different types spawning, coming at you from different angles, and in multiple waves that were much more difficult to manage. Not to mention enemies that have shields that require you to get close to them and perform a melee attack to break. The last thing I want to mention is the game's conclusion. While I said I liked the story, the ending and even the secret ending you unlock after putting more time into the game left me with more questions than answers. If you like stories that are confusing and left to interpretation, you would probably really enjoy it. But with no official ending perspective from the devs, and I haven't been able to find a conclusive explanation even after reading as much fan theories as I could find, and after getting the Platinum Trophy and rereading all the collectibles, documents, and watching the cutscenes from a new perspective, I've settled on one that makes sense to me, but if it's true, then it would mean that most people are actually misinterpreting the ending. Unless Housemarque does a direct sequel, which is unlikely, I doubt that we will ever get concrete answers. And that's it for my thoughts on Returnal. I was thinking about doing an ending theory video for the explanation of the story I think is correct. Let me know what you all thought of the game if you beat it, and let's keep it spoiler free for this video. I'm excited to see more games from the studio in the future, whether that's DLC, a sequel, or a new IP. I appreciate everyone who listened to my thoughts about the game and checking out this video. I don't have any sponsors or even enough subs for monetization, so any feedback in the form of a like, comment, or checking out my other videos is a great help. So until next time, have a great day.